There are trails all over the world that look harmless on a map. Thin lines winding through forests, mountains, deserts, and valleys. They promise quiet, adventure, and escape. People step onto them believing they will return the same day, carrying photos, memories, and tired legs. But some trails do not give people back. The search and rescue teams know this truth better than anyone. They talk about places where compasses spin, radios fail, and dogs refuse to continue. They find abandoned boots neatly placed on rocks, backpacks untouched by weather, and campsites that look packed up, except no one was there to pack them. These are not legends passed down for entertainment. These are accounts collected from survivors, rescuers, and witnesses who still struggle to explain what they experienced. These are true horror stories from trails people never left. Story 1. The trail that followed. Back in 2014, Mark Ellison was an experienced solo hiker. He had logged over 2,000 miles across North America and believed fear was something beginners carried. When he arrived at a remote forest trail known locally as Raven's Spine, he ignored the warning sign that read, "Trail not maintained beyond this point." The path was narrow but clear. Tall pines blocked most sunlight, and the air felt heavier the deeper he walked. What bothered Mark wasn't the silence. It was the rhythm. No birds. No wind. Just footsteps. At first, he assumed the sound belonged to him. But when he stopped, the footsteps continued. Slow. Measured. Always behind him. Mark laughed it off and kept walking. That's when the trail changed. He checked his GPS. According to the screen, he had been walking straight for nearly an hour. But ahead of him, the path curved sharply to the left, into terrain that didn't match the map at all. Then he saw it. A tree carved with a symbol. 3 lines intersecting a circle. He took a photo. 10 minutes later, he passed the same tree again. Same carving. Same scratch marks. Same broken branch at its base. Mark felt his confidence slip for the first time. He turned around. The trail behind him was gone. Where it had been was now thick undergrowth, untouched, as if no human had ever passed through. Panic set in. He tried bushwhacking, but after 20 minutes, he broke back onto the trail, right in front of the carved tree, and the footsteps returned. This time, they were closer. Mark ran. The forest blurred as the path stretched unnaturally long. His lungs burned. His pack bounced violently. And then, silence. The footsteps stopped. He slowed down, heart hammering, and realized he was standing at the trailhead parking lot. His car was exactly where he left it. Relief washed over him. Until he checked the time. He had entered the trail at 9:40 a.m. It was now 3:12 a.m. Search records later confirmed something even worse. Mark had been officially listed as missing for 3 days. He never returned to Raven's Spine. But hikers say that sometimes, when the forest is quiet enough, footsteps follow you until you leave. Story 2. The last campfire. Deep in the Appalachian Mountains, there's a section of trail avoided even by locals. It doesn't have an official name, but hikers call it Dead Ember Pass. In October 2017, four friends, college students with weekend hiking experience, decided to camp there overnight. They reached a clearing just before sunset. No wind, no animal sounds. Their fire crackled louder than it should have. That night, they heard footsteps circling the camp, slow, heavy, deliberate. Assuming it was a large animal, they stayed inside their tents. The footsteps stopped near the fire, followed by a strange sound, like someone breathing too close to the flames. One of them, Tyler, unzipped his tent slightly to look. The fire was still burning, but no one was there. Then the fire changed color. It burned low and dark, casting shadows that didn't match the movement of the flames. Tyler zipped his tent shut and whispered for everyone to stay silent. That's when the whispering started. It wasn't loud. It wasn't clear, but it came from every direction at once. The words sounded familiar, like pieces of conversations the group had earlier that day. Their own voices. At dawn, 2 of the tents were emptied. No signs of struggle. No footprints. No blood. Just sleeping bags laid flat, as if their owners had simply stood up and walked away. Search teams found the campsite 2 days later. The fire pit was cold, but inside it were fresh embers, still warm. No trace of the missing hikers was ever found. The trail remains open. No one camps there anymore. Story 3. The man on the switchbacks. Mountain switchbacks are meant to make climbs easier. Short turns. Predictable paths. In 2009, a solo climber named Elena Ruiz encountered something on a high-altitude trail that still haunts her. She was ascending a long set of switchbacks when she noticed a man standing below her, motionless, facing away. She assumed he was resting. 10 minutes later, she reached the same turn again. The man was still there, same position, same clothing, but now, she was above him. Confused, Elena called out. No response. She continued climbing, And once again, she reached the same turn. Same man, same stance. This time, he slowly turned his head. His face was wrong, not injured, not distorted, just empty, like a placeholder where features should be. Elena ran downhill, ignoring the rules of the trail. Her legs shook as she descended faster than she thought possible. She never saw the man again. Later, park records showed that 3 hikers had disappeared on that same set of switchbacks over the past decade, all last seen standing still, facing downhill. Story 4. The trail that didn't want witnesses in northern Canada. There's a winter trail used only by locals and researchers. In February 2015, a wildlife survey team traveled it by snowshoe. They set up tracking cameras along the route. When the team returned weeks later, the cameras were intact, but the footage was disturbing. Each camera recorded the same event at exactly 2:17 a.m. The image would distort. The forest would appear to lean inward, as if bending toward the lens. Then something tall and thin would pass just out of frame. Never visible, never audible. After that moment, no animals appeared on camera again. Not a single frame of wildlife. The trail was officially closed the following year after 2 researchers vanished during a routine survey. Their equipment was found neatly stacked at the trail entrance, as if someone, or something, didn't want proof. Story 5. The exit that wasn't their. Desert trails are deceptive. Flat. Open. Familiar to in 2018. A couple hiking a well-marked canyon trail in the American Southwest took a wrong turn that shouldn't have existed. The path led them deeper into the canyon, where rock walls narrowed unnaturally. Their GPS showed them moving, but not changing location. They followed the trail for hours, always expecting it to open up. It never did. Finally, they reached a dead end, smooth stone. No cracks, no climbing holds. Behind them, the trail was gone. They spent the night trapped in silence, so complete it felt artificial. At sunrise, the canyon was open again. They walked out in under 10 minutes. Rescue teams found no record of the side trail, no satellite image, no physical evidence. Just their footprints, ending at a wall that had no reason to exist. To be continued. These trails still exist. People still walk them, and sometimes, the trail decides who leaves. Story 6. The voices that knew their names. In 2020, a volunteer search and rescue team was deployed to locate a missing father and son who vanished on a forest trail in the Pacific Northwest. The trail was short, less than 6 miles round trip, and heavily traveled during summer. They should have been found quickly. Instead, the search stretched into days. On the 3rd night, 2 SAR members stayed behind to monitor a junction point. The forest grew unnaturally quiet after sunset. No insects, no wind. At exactly 11:46 p.m., both radios crackled to life. A voice came through. It was calm, clear, familiar. It spoke the rescuer's full name. The voice asked for help. When they replied, asking for identification, the voice paused, then repeated the same sentence, word for word, in the rescuer's own voice. Panicked, they shut off their radios. That's when the calling started in the forest itself, from multiple directions. Whispered voices repeating names, memories, and private conversations that could not have been known. The team evacuated the area immediately. The father and son were never found. Later analysis showed something impossible. The radio transmissions came from inside the mountain, far below ground level. Story 7. The trail marker that moved in a European mountain range. Hikers rely heavily on trail markers, painted symbols on rocks and trees that guide travelers safely through dangerous terrain. In 2016, multiple hikers reported markers appearing where they shouldn't. Arrows pointing off cliffs, symbols leading into dense fog, signs directing hikers in circles. At first, officials blamed vandals. Then a park ranger noticed something disturbing. The paint was old, weathered, decades old. Yet the markers changed position overnight. One experienced hiker followed a fresh-looking arrow that had not been there the previous day. The path narrowed, then vanished. He was found 2 weeks later, alive, dehydrated, and deeply shaken. He claimed the markers kept appearing ahead of him, always just far enough away to chase. He said whenever he stopped, the forest felt closer, like it was leaning in. He refused to hike again. The markers were removed. They reappeared the following spring. Story 8. The group that walked past the exit. A well-known coastal trail features a clear exit point leading back to the parking area. In 2013, a group of 6 hikers reached it just before sunset. Security cameras captured them approaching the exit. They never came out. Search teams found their footprints continuing past the marked end, onto terrain not listed on any map. The path beyond was narrow and strangely well-worn, as if many people had walked it, yet no one remembered doing so. The footprints stopped abruptly at the edge of a cliff, But there were no signs of falling to no disturbed rocks, no belongings. Just 6 sets of prints facing forward, toward open air. The trail was permanently shortened after the incident. Locals say if you hike there at dusk, you can still see a faint path where the exit used to be, leading somewhere it shouldn't. Story 9. The Watcher. Between the trees, some trails feel watched in a dense rainforest trail in South America. Solo hikers have reported the same sensation. The certainty that something tall is moving parallel to them, hidden just behind the tree line. In 2018, a wildlife photographer captured something unusual. His camera triggered repeatedly, but never caught an animal. Instead, each image showed trees slightly shifted from the previous frame, as if the forest itself was repositioning. Then came the final image. A shadow stretched unnaturally long between the trees. No source, no body. The photographer disappeared later that day. Authorities blamed terrain and weather, but local guides refused to use that trail. They say the Watcher doesn't chase. It waits. Story 10. The trail that appeared after the storm. After a powerful storm in 2021, hikers discovered a new trail cutting cleanly through an old national park. It wasn't on any map, but it looked official, clear, wide, inviting. Several people walked it. None returned. When rangers attempted to locate the trail later, it was gone. No break in vegetation, no disturbed soil, no signs it ever existed. Yet missing persons reports all referenced the same detail. A trail that felt newer than the forest around it, if it had just been placed there. Story 11. The place where dogs refuse to go. Search. Dogs are trained to go anywhere, but some trails break that rule. In a desert canyon trail used for decades, dogs repeatedly refused to cross a certain point. They whined, pulled away, and sat down. Human hikers felt nothing unusual until people started vanishing. Point 1. Our handler reported that her dog tracked a scent perfectly until it reached a specific bend in the trail. Then the scent simply stopped, not faded, not scattered. If the person had stepped out of reality, the canyon is now closed. The ground shows no damage, but nothing lives beyond that bend. Story 12. The trail that brought them back. Wrong. Not everyone who disappears stays gone. In 2008, a missing hiker reappeared on a Scottish trail after being lost for 8 days. He was clean, uninjured, calm, too calm. He claimed he had been walking the entire time, but he couldn't. Story 13. The footprints that waded in a snow-covered alpine trail in Eastern Europe. Rescue teams rely heavily on footprints. Snow preserves truth, or so they believe. In January 2019, a solo hiker vanished during a routine climb. Heavy snowfall began just hours after his last known location. When rescuers arrived the next morning, they found his footprints. They followed them easily. The prints were clear, deep, and consistent. But something was wrong. They didn't lead away. They led in circles. Perfect circles. The footprints never overlapped. They never drifted. They never showed signs of fatigue or slipping. The center of the circle was nothing. No dropped geared, no disturbance. Just untouched snow. Then the team noticed something worse. Another set of footprints appeared beside theirs. Fresh, standing still, facing them. The search was abandoned immediately. No storms were recorded that night. No animal tracks were found. Only the hikers' prints, still circling when the snow finally melted. Story 14. The trail that erased Tamiya, popular historical trail in Asia, passes through ruins older than recorded history. Visitors often report losing track of time, but in 2016, one case went far beyond confusion. A guided group of 12 entered the trail at 10:00 a.m. They exited at 10:17 a.m. They believed only minutes had passed, but outside the trail, authorities were waiting. The group had been missing for 4 days. None of them remembered eating, sleeping, or stopping. Their phones showed no activity. Their watches all stopped at the same time. One member of the group later recalled a strange detail. No matter how long they walked, the shadows never moved. The trail remains open. The guides refused to lead it. Story 15. The cabin that wasn't on the map. In a remote woodland trail in the northern United States, a lone backpacker reported finding a small wooden cabin just off the path. It wasn't marked. It wasn't locked. Inside were signs of recent life. Warm ashes, folded clothes, a journal left open on a table. The journal entries were dated years in the future. They described hikers arriving at the cabin, each entry ending with the same sentence. They followed the trail. The backpacker left immediately. When rangers investigated days later, the cabin was gone to NO Foundation to NO Clearing. Just dense forest. The backpacker never returned to hiking. He still has the journal. The final page is blank. Story 16. The sound that means you're lost. Experienced hikers know forests have sounds. Wind, birds, insects. But there is one sound that means dangered. In an Australian bush trail, survivors describe hearing a low humming noise, steady, mechanical, and impossible to locate. Those who follow it disappear. Those who run from it escaped. In 2012, a man reported hearing the hum behind him for hours. When he stopped, it stopped. When he moved, it followed. He finally collapsed from exhaustion. The humming stopped. When he woke up, he was at the trail entrance point. 3 days had passed. Search teams confirmed he had never left the area, yet no one saw him. He says the trail let him go. Others were not so lucky. Story 17. The trail that learns. A newly developed hiking path in South America gained attention after multiple hikers described the same phenomenon. The trail changed. Not dramatically, subtly. Turns appeared slightly closer. Slopes felt steeper each time. Landmarks shifted position. One researcher documented the changes carefully. Each return hike showed the trail becoming more efficient, shorter, quieter, more isolating to as if it were learning how to keep people moving. The researcher vanished on his 7th hike. His notes ended mid-sentence. The trail was shut down. Satellite images show nothing unusual, but locals say the path still exists, and it still improves. Story 18. The place where no one is missing anymore. There is a trail in a remote region of South America that once had dozens of missing persons cases. Then, suddenly, none.no disappearances.no incidents.no reports. Authorities called it a success. Locals call it something else. They say the trail is full.no one hikes it now.no one needs to. Final conclusion. Why some trails never let you leave. Not every trail is dangerous because of animals, weather, or terrain. Some are dangerous because they are old, because they have been walked too many times, because they remember footsteps, names, voices, and sometimes they decide to keep what they're given. So if you ever find yourself hiking and notice the silence lasting too long, the trail repeating itself, footsteps that aren't yours, markers that weren't there before, turn around. Leave immediately, and never assume the trail wants you to finish the journey, because some trails don't lead anywhere, they collect.